Welcome, everyone. This is our last Technovation Field Note series of 2021. And it has been a long ride, long journey. And of course, we've learned a lot. And I am so thrilled to have Dr. Sue Sentance. Is that how I say her last name? Did I say it right? Okay.
Yes, sure.
She has multiple roles. She's the Chief Learning Officer at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and we are huge fans of the work that's coming out of the foundation, and of course also from the Raspberry Pi platform itself. And she's also the director of the Raspberry Pi Computing Education Research Center. And we love researchers because we need all that research to tell us what we need to improve. She has worked as a secondary teacher, a trainer of teachers, a university lecturer and researcher before she joined the foundation a couple of years ago, and the University of Cambridge this year. So she is a very, very busy person. And she has been awarded multiple awards for her work in math and computing and bringing it to the public. So I am very excited to learn more about what goes on in your head, Sue. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. And it's really great to be here and talking to you. So thanks.
And especially from England, it's a different perspective. And I'm curious, like, what does your work in computing education in England tell us a little bit more about? What are the challenges that you are looking more closely at and thinking about how to prepare young people for what lies ahead?
Thank you. Yes. So in my role at Raspberry Pi Foundation, we're very involved with young people, and we work quite closely in England with the Department for Education, with the government there, in the changes that our viewers may be aware of, that computing education has become a mandatory subject in England. You know, before lots of other countries had computing. So we've been really busy in trying to support teachers, trying to develop resources. We've got a platform called Isaac Computer Science for young people to learn computing. We're doing some research trials in gender balance. And so, you know, I'm involved in those sorts of projects. And in England in general, you know, we've had computing in the curriculum since 2014. And, you know, it's been really hard for teachers. And then, you know, obviously everything's been hard for teachers in the last couple of years. So, you know, I really want to do research to sort of support them generally.
So what kinds of questions are you asking?
So what we're really interested with, two things we're really interested in two big buckets of things that we're interested in. One big bucket is, you know, why is there underrepresentation in computing of particular different groups, and why do less girls take computer science when they get to the time that they can choose it. You know, we have mandatory computing, which is a real leveler, you know, because formal school education is for everyone. And, you know, once you've got something that's in the school curriculum, all children can access it, you know, even if they you know, have, you know, disadvantages in all sort of areas. So, but when the subject becomes elective, still we have the gender imbalance. We still at 14 have only 20% of our GCSE computer science of female entries, even though we've done, no, people have been researching this for ages.
You said at 14, is that the age?
So, well, we have mandatory computing officially until 16, but in reality, because of our system, students choose about 10 subjects when they're 14, and they have to do English and maths and science, and then they choose whether they want to do computer science or art or drama or music and you know, computer science, you know, we have many more boys than girls. So you asked me about the research. So one area is
why
all the kind of the diversity and inclusion kind of issues. Another area of research is around computing itself, because we've had maths in the curriculum and science in the curriculum for ages. We understand much better how to teach them, but we don't really know how to teach programming in school.
Mm.
And when we first started teaching programming in school, we just did what we've done with adults, and it didn't work. So, so we need research in which concepts are tricky, what are learning
What the
trajectories, what
sequences.
pedagogies. Yeah. So
So
there's
what are you
loads to
finding?
do.
Especially with, and I love like the Raspberry Pi pieces, like, and I know you said like your research goes beyond, it's like platform agnostic, but the hardware component allows you to make so many amazing things. And so I'm curious, like the intersection of the real world of making and computer science, like what are you seeing works to keep young people, especially girls, engaged?
Yeah, well, there's definitely, physical computing, anything you're making, actually making a thing that has a function is really engaging and really motivating. So whether it's with the Raspberry Pi or any of the other sort of devices, there is,
What are your favorite examples?
Well, I think when I was doing a project a few years ago, they were working with sort of young girls using a device and doing things like this. They cut open a toy, a teddy actually, and put the gadget inside so that it would tell stories, and they could record the stories and get it to tell stories, and giving it actually something to do. And then examples of devices that would, making devices that would tell you when your coffee was cool, your tea was cool enough to drink, and that sort of thing. Things that have a purpose, that actually. And there was a device made with a sort of a walking stick for elderly people that when it fell over would sound an alarm in case the older person had. So, and these are all made by groups of girls who are thinking about, here's a problem, and can technology give us a solution? So there's, really, and these are a few years ago, and I think, and Raspberry Pi has a competition called Coolest Projects. They run internationally, where groups of young people or individuals can build things, and then they can be judged, and there are rewards and things. And we see amazing creativity in those projects. Fantastic.
I remember one Technovation team did something similar to what you're explaining with the teddy bear. They put a phone inside, and using Google Dialogflow, made a Google Assistant that could help cheer up children if they are feeling. But it's the Google Assistant, so you can actually have some sort of AI depending on what are the children's responses, and engage in a dialogue inside the teddy bear. So I think that's interesting. And I'm going to check out the Coolest Projects, because I think I've been curious about 3D printers, because we had another guest on this interview list, and he was saying that 3D printers on their own are okay, but when you combine it with, say, find a problem and develop sort of the software to go along with the hardware, that's when amazing magic happens, right? So I'm curious to see what people are doing. So I know a big area of your research and focus, and of course that's the whole focus for Technovation, is the gender imbalance, and we talked a little bit about it. What are your sort of hypotheses? And I know like there's so much research that's already been done on this. Like some part of me says, okay, we know why girls, we're kind of looking for an easy answer. That's why we keep doing more research. But I'm curious, like what are you finding?
Yeah, so we're involved in some really quite big trials at the moment that we'll get results from next year. We had a little blip.
Yeah, I think you're back. That's okay.
I'm back.
So,
Okay.
yeah, maybe we can. You were talking about the trial, and that you get some results. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been funded by the government to carry out randomized control trials on different areas. And we'll be able to publish the results next year. And they draw on the three main kind of barriers around belonging, encouragement, and relevance. You really tackle the relevance thing, making computing relevant, not feeling like you belong, and not being encouraged by society or peers or parents or whatever. But also we're looking at two other areas. One is around teaching approach. So we're looking at storytelling with very small children. We've just got the results out. They'll be on the website quite soon. Sort of with 5 to 7 year olds as a sort of genre that can introduce students to computing, because stories are, like have algorithmic kind of features in them, and also in computing you want to be able to design something just like writing a story. And so, but the trials are around like collaborative approaches to teaching. So there's this kind of traditional view that you sit in front of a computer and you make something, but actually let's bring dialogue and collaboration into the classroom. And does that make a difference to gender balance? And then we're also looking at the transition from informal learning, so things you do, and Raspberry Pi does a lot outside the classroom. Now, can you link that to formal education to say to and then we're really exploring that in some depth. Did those kind of experiences where we have better gender balance in like code clubs that we run and coder dojos that we run, much higher, like 35-40% of girls. And can we link that to formal education and sort of career choices and that sort of thing? So those are the areas that we're looking at, all sort of based on lots of research that people have done in the past, but we hope to get very clear answers from those studies.
Yeah, I like that. And I love the framing of belonging, encouragement, and relevance. And I think cultural stereotypes play such a big role in belonging, where I think sometimes what we found is like having too narrow of an approach where you're only looking at the curriculum or the mode of delivery, whereas you need to engage the parents. And parental engagement is not easy. And sometimes organizations, they say, well, this is not my job. And so when you disconnect it, then you cannot have a systemic solution. And I think, I forget, somebody said it, like, we've got to be able to do it all because the problem is so complex, that I think that's the framework mindset that you have to approach it, that it's going to have multiple prongs and you got to be able to go beyond just the curriculum or the mode of delivery. I'm curious about the research results. When are you going to publish? You said next year?
Yeah, next year. Yeah. But on that point, we're running some seminars, and we had a fantastic speaker last year called Shamari Jones, from your neck of the woods, actually, and talking about, trying to provide, how difficult it was in COVID. Students didn't have devices. And so the schools were trying to give out devices to children so they could do their homework. But to the family, it was like a brick. They didn't really understand. Unless you can engage the family and the community, then nobody knows what to even do with the device. So it's definitely, that was the message that we really took from, that, his experience in schools in US was about, really engaging with parents, family.
But I think it's not just US.
Not US, but I mean, he was in the US. But I mean, like everywhere. I mean, the same in England. We have the same issues. Yeah.
And I mean, regardless of developing countries, I mean, there's no country in the world that has gender equality, right? And so I think this is a very, very deep issue. And yes, it's surfacing in computer science, but it's not just specific to computer science. And I think I have 2 young girls, and I mean, they probably are more exposed to strong feminist talk than most people. But even then, the public school system approaches girls in math and in a very different way. And I'm not sure it's a public school system issue. I think it's just the school system issue. It's like normal human biases that have to be addressed. So I feel like any solution needs to take that into account, and I think you do with the teacher training. So you've recently started focusing on AI education. So what are your thoughts on that? I saw this huge wave of interest in mobile 15 years ago. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, AI is like that, but maybe broader, of course, and more powerful. But I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on where this is going to go?
It really is. There really is like this wave of interest in AI education for children, AI machine learning and data science. And we've been trying to focus on it by kind of bringing in lots of experts with different views to, sort of hear their opinions. And we're moving towards really sort of synthesizing those from our seminars. But we've also developing tools like lots of other people are. But my worry is that we just think, oh, it's the latest thing. Let's make another little classifying tool for children. Like, is it a fish? Is it not a fish? Let's make another classifier, and then we narrow down what the whole subject area is. Machine learning is not just classifying.
And that's not classical AI anyway.
No, exactly, and secondly, we haven't really listened to learners at all about. We haven't listened to learners about what they are, what their perspectives are, and what they think about the technology, what they need to know. And we haven't really, we haven't unpicked what the concepts are. And if you listen, I have a colleague who goes to his AI talks, and she writes down every time they use words like data labels and algorithms and things like this, and people are using all the terminology in completely different ways. So it's completely confusing if you look at it as a child. So what we want to do is to sort of go back to the actual concepts and what is age appropriate to be able to teach young children to really think about that. And I think there's lots of collaboration that we could do around that, because lots of people are interested. And I think we're also, in England, they published a national AI strategy when they talk about bringing AI into school. But there's so many questions around that. Like, is it part of computer science, or should it be taught all, around? Because, and are we teaching people awareness or ethical issues, or are we teaching technical skills, or are we teaching a combination? So I think, sorry, I'm asking more questions than I have answers on all of your questions.
But
I have no answers to any of your questions.
Exactly.
So I think I wish people would just slow down a little bit when it comes to young people, and really think and find out from teachers and learners what is appropriate, find out from experts, draw that information together, because we treat children like guinea pigs. Do you know what I mean? We try things out in schools that sometimes won't work. And I think we need to think about this. And this is what I'd like us to do, at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, is to really, take an interest in this, but to do it properly.
Yeah, and I also think that the world is dramatically different now than it was when we were in school. And I feel that the same question of what concepts are important to teach may not even be the right question to ask. It is like, what are the tools and mindsets young people need to be armed with so that they can tackle these extremely complex problems, right? That I think we've solved the easy problems. Only the hard problems are left. And so our education system doesn't teach complex systems thinking. It doesn't teach. And so we're looking at the problem from very narrow ways. Ethics, here's a thing on ethics. No, it's not that. It is a complex social problem. And if you don't show, you can't just have a checklist or a fact data sheet or something that tells you how to think about all the minority communities affected. That's too simplistic, right? Like, so I think it's more teaching that skill of complex systems thinking and real world problem solving, because the problems that we are presenting to young people are the hardest we've ever seen. And our school system is not equipping them. No computer science curriculum that I've seen even talks about how do you apply it to a complex social problem? All the examples are so trivial or based in the capitalistic world, right? Like here's a product, or up down trainer model, right? Like these are the jump from there to find a relevant problem is enormous. And that's what we see in Technovation, that the girls really struggle. So it's not enough to just provide the AI curriculum. You also have to provide the curriculum that goes along with each of the sustainable development goals. So I feel that there was a cartoon I saw today. It's like, don't ask like, is this the right answer, but ask, is this the right question, right? And I feel like we may need to refresh all the questions we are used to asking.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think when we think about data science, that is exactly asking the right question is exactly what you need to learn to be able to do that effectively.
And I think some of that comes from actually going out into the real world and experiencing and talking to people, because if you are a student, you don't typically have that much world experience, right? And so you may not even be able to ask the right questions looking at a spreadsheet of data. That is the most boring thing to look at. I mean, we are in year 2 going into year 3 of COVID with Omicron. So what have you seen as learners across England dealing with COVID, and especially sort of the role of technology in that?
Yeah, it's been really, I mean, like for every country, but it's been really challenging. And I think, when like we got to last March 2020 and suddenly the schools closed, and then teachers were told to teach online. I mean, it's the same all over the world. It was really, really hard, especially for teachers who weren't teaching technology subjects. They weren't. And we also suddenly realized the disparities in our system, that children who hadn't got devices at home, and all of those issues. So I think we're still in a position in England where we have high levels of the virus. We have people, teachers being sent home all the time, half the class being, self-isolating at home. We have all this kind of blended learning, but I think we have got better, I think, at working out blended learning, and I think whereas before, when we first, ended up in this, the e-learning researchers were sort of going to, why didn't you listen to us? Because we've learned, I think, that when you have a synchronous exchange, when you're online, I'm talking to you now, we're live, you can do problem solving, you can ask questions, you can do something collaboratively. You don't need to deliver a PowerPoint presentation. You can do that on using async. And I think teachers have learned. I think that the use of technology more appropriately, I think, has come in, and teachers have got more skill in these. Yeah. And I said the e-learning researchers probably found this out 20 years ago or whatever, and already and nobody listened to them.
But nobody learns from just reading something.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to experience it yourself.
Yes,
the pain.
exactly. Yes, exactly. And I interviewed some teachers because I'm interested in programming pedagogy and how you teach programming, and teachers saying, well, it's really hard because I used to do pair programming in the classroom. I'd have children together at a computer. I can't do that anymore. But then as they got used to the technology, they realized that actually children could see each other's screens, and they could see more than one person's screens. And then actually could learn from each other in different ways. So I think it's an evolution of sort of teaching practice that's taken place over time, and it's quite interesting what things that may never go back to where they where they were before.
And I think like everybody says, right, like we've made like at least 5 to 7 years progress in where like teachers have made, right, like in how they've adopted technology, which is a good thing. And come to value the in-person so much more than we never take school for granted.
Yes.
So what is the role, you think, of research in computing education?
Well, I think I don't know. In England we've neglected research as we've put lots of funds into getting mandatory computing into the curriculum. We've trained teachers. We've had a large amount of government funding, and we've unfortunately not really had that infrastructure for research. And it's, as I'd said before, it's really important that we understand how to teach computer science and AI, or any of the STEMs. Well, the STEM subjects have had a little bit more research, but that we really, for computer science, that we understand how to teach it well. Because getting computer science into the curriculum and then just putting it there, that's not going to get you anywhere. Because if it's not taught very well, kids will go, well, this is even worse than I thought. So I think we have a lot to understand there, and we need to work with teachers. And we need to have teacher participants in research working with us. The research needs to go into practice. So I think I'm not in favor of research sitting on dusty library shelves. It's very much about working with teachers to find out what we're learning, and be able to put that into practice. And I've been very fortunate that we've been able to set up this research centre just this summer with Cambridge University. And really the idea
Congratulations.
Yes, it's very exciting. But I'm in my 50s. I'm towards the end of my career, but it's really that we can maybe have PhD students, and we can have younger people coming into this field. We've never had computing education researchers, do you know what I mean, coming into this field to be able to study it and become the experts on this in the future. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I love reading research papers, and I'm always stunned at how we don't make decisions based on data. We make decisions based on how we feel. And I think that's the big gap between when researchers, the research sits on dusty shelves, right? Because there has to be this whole another layer of effort to make the recommendations more friendly and accessible to the practitioners, right?
I've been thinking about this a lot recently. There's three kinds of, so if you think about knowledge mobilization as the way that research gets into practice, there's a guy called Carlyle who said there are three kinds: transfer, translation, and transformation. And transformation is around teachers being able to take the research and adapt it to their own context, or use their own professionalism to see where it can be used. I think this idea that, here's some research, we can just, give you a short version and there you go, is too simplistic.
Yeah, I love it. So it's transfer, translate, and transformation. I think it's a function of similar to good teaching too, right? Like project-based learning is based in that, where you don't just take some facts, but you actually apply it. But it takes so much more effort, and only a few teachers do it because it takes so much effort, right?
Yes.
We are running out of time. So tell us about, like you said, you're towards the end of your career, and it's been I wouldn't say that, but I think your career is inspiring. You've been a champion of STEM and computer science education for so long. Tell us a little bit about what drives you.
What drives me? I think I was a teacher. It's having been a teacher that has always driven me. Even though I've been out of teaching now since 2010, I went into teacher training. But I look back, I did my PhD in artificial intelligence, and I got it in 1993. So that was the second winter of AI. And I was working in AI in education, and I was developing a system to support people learning second languages. Because I had no idea about teaching, education, or learners, or anything. And there I was happily making this software. And through my career, I became a teacher, then a teacher trainer, and now I do research again. So I've come back to research with the benefits of this experience. And I what drives me is listening to school education practitioners and learners, and just embedding that in our research, enabling teachers to do research, enabling teachers to understand their practice and what improves learning, because I think that's so important, and that's generally for teachers, but in particular for computer science. I just feel like this is an undervalued subject. I came to computer science because this is before anybody had personal computers or anything, because I was good at maths and I was good at languages. And I think, and I would never have been that person that been a hobbyist or sitting in my bedroom and, I would have been out or, doing something else, but because I had the opportunity to study it as a subject, and this is why I think it's so important in school. And I think my languages really helped me with programming, that I think we kind of aren't quite sometimes getting to what a useful subject it is and how it might engage lots of other people that we haven't thought of. Not just girls, but lots of boys that might not even think about it.
Different communities, right, that are not usually part of the. So on that note, so what should we be working with intention in 2022?
Well, in I feel like a bit of a scratch record, but I do think that in our research, well, I look at it from a research perspective, and you're talking about collecting data and this sort of thing, and that's really important. But I think we just need to put the young person, the learner, and I'm sure you do in your organisation, but in the centre of this, and not dictate what people need or want or whatever. So I'd like to, the intention for me and my team, who I'm working with, is just to sort of do more work around the voice of the learner. And I think that's really what we want to be more, listening.
And especially if we wanted to be transformational, right?
Yes.
It has to be fun and truly engaging and relevant to the young people. So Sue, thank you so much for doing this. I know it is December 15th and everybody is slammed, but thank you for sharing, and congratulations on the launch of your research center. I hope that 2022 brings some rich collaborations with each of us. So thank you, all the best, and happy holidays. Thank you for those watching.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for inviting me.